Well, hey everybody, Wes McDonald here, and I want to thank you for joining us for the year of the Tiger, and what a year it has been. So as we're closing up at the end of 2022, pretty excited today to get a bunch of folks in the industry that you may know of. You can see them on the screen there. And we're going to be talking reflections and predictions. So kind of looking at the year that we've all been going through, as well as the one that is coming up ahead. And it has certainly been one for the record books. Just remember, folks, as you're tuned in here, Tigerpaw loves you to join the conversation. So any questions and comments you have as we go through the live stream today, we look forward to hearing those and sharing them on the screen as well. Don't forget to head over to tigerpaw.com where you'll find lots of other great learning content as well. And I think most of the folks that you're seeing on the screen here today have other content with us as well. So certainly be sure to check that out. So remember to get into the conversation. Look forward to hearing everyone and joining in. So what I'm going to do is start to bring some of the guests in. And Wes, maybe I'll start with you because your name is one letter away from my name, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have to listen really closely when somebody says West. Are they saying West with a T or not?
I do too. I remember I reached out actually to Mike Stramaglio after one of our T100 sessions that we do because he'd actually thrown something out there, and I thought it was to me. And he said, no, I was speaking to Wes McArtor. I was like, okay. Yeah, it's a little too close sometimes. We're going to actually have to get people calling us by our full names.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining in today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And also coming in, the one, the only, Mike McCurdy. How are you, buddy?
Doing very well. How are you?
Really good. Nice to see you on the call today.
You too.
And we were talking a little bit beforehand, so I know that you're doing some year-end planning, just like some of the folks over there at Tigerpaw are. So really appreciate you taking the time away from that to join us here today.
You bet.
And of course, we have another Mike here, so there's confusion with Wes and West. How about Mike and Mike? So Mike Stramaglio, how are you, sir?
I am doing fabulous. Thank you.
Well, great to have you on the show again, and really excited to actually see you at the Executive Connection Summit in January. So looking forward to sharing some inspiration for the new year and some new ideas and fresh thinking with you in person.
Well, thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it.
Absolutely. Wouldn't be a show without you. And looks like we also have Mr. Marc Spring. How are you, Marc?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate you jumping in the call today. And I've enjoyed actually speaking with you over the last few weeks in the top 100. I love everyone that is on this call, the stuff that we do together. We actually had to cancel the call with the group today to be able to do this live stream. So for everyone else, sorry about that. I guarantee that there's going to be a few people trying to log in right now. Even when you send out cancellations, I've done it myself, where you're logged in and you're like, where is everybody? And it's like, well, I guess after about 10 or 15 minutes, you figure that out. And Eric Crump, how are you, sir? Oh, it looks like you're on mute. Let's see if I can.
That's a reflection of this last year.
Yeah. Somebody please find them.
And I have a solution for the multiple Wests and Mikes. Is what our kids call us in the Young Marines. I'm Mr. Crump. So just go by Mr. in your last name, and then you can't go wrong.
Oh, isn't that funny? So that's one of those things that used to be very common, right? And now we kind of say when people call us Mr., it's like, hey, do I look like my dad? You know, whereas it used to be a badge of honor, but maybe we'll have to start doing that. Well, I appreciate you, Mr. Crump, and being here today.
Thank you.
And a big shout out for all the work that you do for the Young Marines and also for the Managed Print Service Association, which we both serve on the exec committee for. So thank you for that. Oh, and thank goodness we got another Canadian here to balance things out, eh? How's it going, Rob?
It's going good, West. Hey, of course. Here to support, man.
Yeah, I will say this is probably kind of typical, right? That, when you think of the U.S. versus Canada, we're like the little brother. So probably two of us is about exactly the right amount of representation, right?
Exactly.
And this would not be a live stream without my good friend, Matt Lee. How are you, Matt?
You know, I'm starting to come out of hibernation. I got a little bit of my beard back, so I'm improving.
I was going to say, it's weird. We're going to have bigger pictures here in a minute, but yeah, I can actually see the beard coming in. So that's great. And a great cause, obviously, that you do. And I'll get you to talk a little bit about that later today, but I think you guys raised over like $100,000, right, towards charity.
No, we hit $202,000.
Oh,
we doubled our
come
goal.
on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
Well,
nuts.
congratulations on that. Well worth losing a few whiskers for a few months.
Definitely.
And Greg Walters, how are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you? How's
Good.
everyone?
Shall I say my fellow introvert in hiding?
Yes, introverts. That's me.
Yeah, thanks for joining in on my other live stream this morning. Always great to have you in there.
That was fun.
All right, so I think the band of folks have gathered together, so we'll jump right in. Let me see if I can get everyone. I don't, excuse me, think I'm missing anybody here today, but we will, to be able to see everybody, make sure you talk and we'll, punch you back in because I think we've got a screen hold of about 9 here. And what I'll do is we start to move through this. I can hide myself once in a while. And if you got something to say, I'm looking at you on the screen. So just put up your hand if you're not in there for some reason. As always, we do like people to join in. So I love Greg Walters. Not only are you a guest, but you're tuned in.
I don't know how that happened. So
Yeah. I love that. And Ingrid Beard, good to see you out there as well. So remember, folks, if you are out there watching today, we'd love to have your comments and questions. And boy, oh boy, this has been quite a year, right? And before we get into kind of the stuff that affects how we all make a living and the channels that we serve, I'm going to get into Wes top 5, right? And these are some of the things that I thought, for 2022 were impactful. Not all of them are good, and I think we can all agree that 2022 is a mixed bag, right? So, but certainly one of the things, I don't know if you guys, anyone been following this, nuclear fusion, they finally actually generated
yesterday.
more energy than it consumed, right? I think that's kind of a big deal.
By 1.5 too, I might add, like a
Right?
50% return on investment of energy input. That's pretty big. So
Yeah, it's astounding, right? And it's funny, a couple days before, I was actually just watching a documentary on energy production, and that they were fighting to be able to get the lasers aligned and everything to do that, right? So a really big one, there. The other one that I thought was pretty big this year is obviously the Artemis moon mission, right? Like actually, NASA's back at it again, big time. Private space is growing, and it looks like the space program is back, right? So thought that was another, big deal in a good way. The next one that I have in my top 5 is not so good, and obviously the Ukraine war, right? That, it's so strange. You think that you live in a world where it's always progressing, and then in some ways it does go back, right? And to see these kind of things, heartfelt reach out to all those in Ukraine. Obviously, we have a strong Ukrainian population here in Canada, particularly in Alberta, where I grew up. So I know a lot of people that are personally impacted, from this as well, right? So certainly one of the tragedies of 2022. On the upside, though, one is living with COVID, right? And I was having a conversation before this show started with a couple of folks, but we're on the other side. It looks like it's safe to say at least that, we're living with this now as we would the flu or any other, kind of sickness that we have. Travel's great for me as a Canadian, and Rob, I'm sure you can attest. Crossing the borders, just like the good old days, right? I mean, it's, they ask the questions, make sure you're going across for the right reasons, and off you go. I missed a BTA event when this whole first thing started that I was supposed to be speaking, actually. There I had to create a video for that, because of all the complications with trying to get there. And that's gone now. So I think we can all agree it's a nice place to, be again, right? And my last top 5, my personal top 5, Star Wars Andor, baby. You got to
That's not a bad one. That's a good one.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I think it's the best Star Wars, definitely the best Star Wars on television that's come out ever. Certainly better than the Star Wars Christmas special from, the late 70s. And anyone remembers that?
I love that.
Oh, boy.
Chewbacca on ice.
Yeah, and Chewbacca's grandfather on drugs. I don't know if you remember that, but that was the bizarrest installment of Star Wars ever. So that's my top 5 list. And did I miss any big ones other than Star Wars? I'm joking a bit there. What else was kind of big outside of our space for 2022?
Supply chain.
Yes, and we'll get into that for sure because that was a monster and continues to be, right?
Well, and multiple definitions thereof, right? Supply chain from a physical access of things versus supply chain and the overall understanding of risk and its stacked effect of supply chain aspect from a cybersecurity perspective is starting to become more and more realized in the last year too.
Yes, it is, and I follow you, Matt, and everything that you write on the topic and the people that you interview. It's it's a crazy area, right? And certainly watching some of the stuff that's happened, I know that they, talk about the fact that they're going after more physical vulnerabilities on hardware as well. So if it's chipsets or other things that they're getting sneakier about where they're going to get in, right? And it's it's certainly a frightening world. So appreciate the work that you and your folks on the security side do. While you're here, also be sure it will be in the comment section. You can actually click on it there. That we've got an ebook which we'll talk about a little bit later, because one of the points that I did bring up, obviously, and Mike Stramaglio, you're going to love me for bringing this one up again. The R word, the potential recession. So, yeah. All right. So let's get into it. So before I start moving through the industry top 5 that I've written down, I'm going to throw it out to the group now. So what do you think it was? And if we can, because we've got quite a few people on the call today, for a show of hands, and then we'll do it that way so we're not talking over each other. So does somebody have one for our industry specifically? I know it came up. Do we want to start with supply chain?
Yeah.
And that is on my list. Yeah, and in our top 100 call last week, for those that don't know that are watching today or watching the recording, many of the folks on this group get together on a weekly basis and kind of talk through some of these things. And one of the new things with supply chain that we talked about last week was supply glut, right? Like finally, be careful what you wish for, that as the new stuff starts coming across. We got all this inventory for stuff in our warehouses because they told us we had to buy it, and we did buy it, and now we have it. So there's all these issues that come with supply chain, right? So who wants to take this one first? What do you think some of the primary, things with supply chain were, that affected your business? And Mike McCurdy, you're one of the dealers on the call, so maybe you can start that one.
Fortunately for us, our manufacturers did a decent job. I was heavily disappointed in 2022 at the lack of transparency from the manufacturers, but Sharp was a unique case, and they delivered in a manner that others struggled to do. So that was a positive in the supply chain issue. But it was a little bit difficult to deal with, even with that. Waiting for a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of us were waiting for things from 8 to 12 months, and it seems like it all just dumped on us in November, pretty much. So,
isn't that crazy? And I think actually you're one of the the dealers on our call that brought up this idea of the glut now, that we've got that stuff there, right? And Marc, I know you had a pretty valuable solution for that. What was it?
What was that?
You had a pretty a valuable solution for the supply glut some of the dealers might be suffering. Do you remember what that was?
Man, I have so many ideas. I don't know if it was, for the dealers to, exchange those products kind of with each other and use something like, what Wes offers, ability to be able to move your excess inventory. But I don't really remember particularly.
I think you offered to buy it.
Yeah. We do buy excess inventory. We do buy inventory. But yeah, for sure. We're always looking for supplies.
I love it.
OEM. Yeah, definitely.
And Rob, what about you up in Canada? I know that the depending on where you are, it's a different market, right? So how's it been for you with supply chain? What are some of the issues?
It's kind of interesting. I mean, we've had 1 million plus on back order for, month over month for, I think, for the whole year, and we still do. We are seeing, more inventory coming from some partners and less from others. But I think it's going to start correcting itself in the next, few months for sure. But this is interesting. I mean, we've been, chasing our tails really as an industry, trying to get inventory of equipment to satisfy clients' needs for forever, it seems like now, right? Just to fulfill. And we're starting to now see that some of our partners, hardware partners, have inventory, and they're putting it all on sale to blow it out for year end. So it's like, whoa, what's going on here?
Or calling us and asking us to take it back for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen discounts. Who's discounting?
Yeah, we're seeing year-end discounts from Canon, actually.
Really?
Pretty
Wow.
significant. Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's in Canada, right? So who knows? It might be completely different in the U.S., but we'll obviously try to capitalize on that. And just talking about vendor partner, with Canon on the HP side, we're still seeing pretty significant back orders on most of the equipment there that are just starting to come in. So I think they probably hit the U.S. first, and Canada's, like you said, West, we're just a small population up here in the Great White North, right? So
Yeah.
what can you do?
Yeah, pretty small impact. And it is interesting, though. And, I think we've talked, previously about the fact that, like, chips were an example, right? With the chip shortage, we started seeing a lot more, movement on more expensive devices, if that was in the server world or the, copier world, et cetera, because guess what? When you don't have enough chips, you put them where the money is, right? And certainly I think with countries, that's fair to say too, that they're going to put a little more focus on our friends in the US because of just the movement of currency, right? Sadly, being cool doesn't amount for much when it comes to money. All right, that's one that we got that I have on my list. So Eric Crump, what's your contribution?
I was just gonna mention that I work for Ringdale, the company that invented Follow Me Printing, and usually our products are attached to the hardware that's coming in. So that was one thing, as people are trying to sell, software that attaches itself to digitalization or security, there was definitely an impact there, and with the supply chain.
And I'm curious, Matt Lee, and your side of the world, right? Obviously, on the security side, Pax8 does a lot of work with folks that that are using Microsoft products of all kinds. But I can remember one call specifically with you where there was a cyber incident and people were trying to move off Exchange servers, right, into Office 365, right? So it is a much more cloud-based world. Has there been less impact for MSPs with this supply chain, gluts that the world's been experiencing, or do you think it's on par?
One of the things that you're starting to see, I think, to answer your question quickly, would be certainly as you see less and less servers and less infrastructural dependence and shifting that to more ephemeral and rapidly creatable assets in the cloud, you definitely see less of that pain from supply chain. What it doesn't get rid of when you're going back to just raw physical supply chain is access to laptops, access to replacement parts, access to drives, access for some of those still maintaining infrastructure. And I won't get off my soapbox here, but it's why you're going to start seeing more and more kind of haves and have-nots around growth tied to infrastructural methodologies vis-a-vis less infrastructural, more cloud-centric methodologies. So definitely less in that definition of supply chain. We, of course, have our other definition of supply chain from a security risk perspective, but the physical global slowdown of boats getting stuck in a canal are still present for the MSP.
Yeah, well, what you talk about, I think there's an acceleration too in this whole cloud migration, right? That like I've been in this long enough to remember, and I think everyone on this call has, obviously, when cloud was absolutely a dirty word, right? And it's just a given now. People are no longer asking, can I have my on-prem solution, please? They're saying how quickly can you get to the cloud, right?
Yeah. And one of the last couple things that are still left in that, ironically, is definitely to paper solutions, right? And from paper solutions. And so those are still, you can't cloud the printer too often. It doesn't work so well, right? You can definitely add and cloudify to it, but, so yeah, definitely.
Cool. Appreciate it. We're going to move off supply chain now, and I'm going to move on to another top industry trend for 2022. But does anyone want to throw one out there, see if it's on the list, see if we're on the same brain page? What about you, Mike Stramaglio? What do you think was one of the top things?
Hiring people.
Yes. Yeah.
Where are they? Who are they? How do I get them? How do I pay them? What do I do with them?
Right.
Yeah. And this is a problem that has not gone away. And Wes McArtor, I want to thank you for sharing an article with me the other day. We're kind of looking at some of the other things, and we've talked about this a lot as groups, right? We all have. But certainly hiring and retention has further issues because of an aging workforce that's leaving the marketplace and a highly skilled, group of people that are leaving the marketplace, right? And Wes McCarter, I think you shared, like, what does it take? It takes 2 or 3 years to train a service tech, right? But how long does it take for them to become experts?
And to get them productive, right? And
Right.
when you look at the average age of a technician being in the mid 50s now,
Wow.
and the younger generation not really wanting to do break fix as
Or
we
anything.
traditionally do in our business, they're going to be facing an uphill battle of either trying to figure out how to compensate high tenured, older technicians because they need them, they can't find somebody to replace them, or finding a way to deliver products that don't break as much.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing too, right? That every channel that's working with technology is looking for that stuff that is less break fix. And I know in the managed IT world they started moving away from that quite a while ago, moving into more services based approaches. And that's one reason that I personally have been so hell bent on leather, if you will, towards getting the office equipment channel towards some kind of flat rate subscription model for managed print. Because the managed IT space has been doing that. And I know there's still project revenue, but certainly that has accelerated as well with all of this cloud migration. And when you have fewer people to fix things, the less they need to be fixed, probably the better for the business model. And I'm wondering, wonder who I'd get to jump on this next. Actually, Mike, maybe you deal with a lot of dealers, right? So, one of the problems, obviously, when we're looking towards this technology future is making sure that the folks that we're getting, the younger folks, that there's some kind of appeal in the space for them, right? So is there going to be any talk on that at the show that you're putting on in January at the Executive Connection Summit?
Absolutely. In fact, that's a big part of the focus for ECS. What does the landscape look like as far as the workforce goes? I mean, you have young people right now making $10,000 to $30,000 a month on TikTok. Fixing copy machines isn't very exciting at that point. So yes, it's very much a part of what we're going to be talking about at ECS. To be candid with you, I was listening to all of you talk about supply chain. I think hiring and finding the right people is even more important than supply chain. It's not just sales and service people, but it's IT people and logistics people, all the data people. So it's very, very important that we get our arms around what the next generation of leaders and workers look like. And that's very much part of what we're doing at ECS.
And how they want to work too, because it's a whole different philosophy now of the opportunities. Well, I want to go in the office. I don't have to go in the office. Some things I can do from my phone. There's the mentality that I see with, millennials coming into the space, and we're having to kind of change with them, right? They want to work in a certain way, and we have our ways. We've been doing it forever, but in order to have these businesses grow, you have to start being able to bring those people into work, and they don't want to come into work, right? So, how do you build that environment in this space? Break fix, you got to go out and do it.
Well, whatever coming into work this day and age means, right? Does that mean logging in on your computer? And Greg Walters, I just saw another thing that you wrote on this. You've been attacking it like a bulldog, right? This whole idea of kind of remote work and people, that the dynamic is changing, right? So, like, what do you think?
Well, it's interesting. I just had a conversation with a gentleman. He's 50 employees, so true SMB. Did not believe in work from home or anywhere until COVID. It's a very familiar story, right? Until COVID came in, they found out how productive it was. But now he wants to bring people back to the office, and it is the cultural thing. And it's really interesting is that we even got to the point of the discussion. It's like, okay, I really want to make my environment something that people want to come to, right? Okay. And I told him it's going to be tough because right now, even a 45-minute drive, he's in San Diego, a 45-minute drive in San Diego, if there is such a thing, that's an hour and a half a day. You add that up, and now everyone knows that. And they know that when they get to the office, they're going to do the same thing they could do there is in the den or somewhere back at a more comfortable spot. So the big struggle that he's seen is how do I make the environment more attractive? And I think we're going to see that more and more in the next years. All right. Culture and everything else, but how can I make it more attractive? The Taco Tuesdays aren't going to work. And I don't know what the answers are, right? But he's approaching that.
I think you have to start seeing hybrid,
Yeah.
Well, the hybrid,
hybrid space. And it's not so much about a hybrid workspace. It's a hybrid lifestyle. One of the things my father, when I go back to the thing my father taught me one time about business, you're not going to change your employee, the person. If they are a person that comes in at this time and leaves at that time, if they're worth that much value to you, you have to kind of work within each person's environment, because you don't know what they have to deal with for kids or school or life, whatever. And I think that's now people got the grasp of, wow, I can do both and juggle both. And I'm going to look for that person that sees my lifestyle ahead of their business.
Yeah.
Because I would always put my lifestyle ahead of my business.
I'd put that 100%. And I think one of the things, going back to what you said earlier, and also what you said down in the bottom right corner, I'm terrible with names, y'all, but one of the things you said earlier was we had COVID and people, were forced to work from home. We had this deal. But what we really had was a forced experiment that succeeded in so very many ways, back to your point down in the bottom right corner of saying, hey, but then they were more productive. And you have this elasticity of saying, but I want them back in the office. I want to return back. And I think what we're seeing is the ebbing and flowing of this experiment playing out. And what I think ultimately happens with this is we've created something that never goes back to the way it was. I know that sounds like Madden, just coaching football, right? But like we'd never going to go back where we were. And I think what might shake out in this hybrid that you said pretty well in the middle was at some point people say, I want to work the lifestyle I want. Yeah, but they just got exposed for 2.5 years to the lifestyle they want, period. And I think you're finding now they can work anywhere. People have created the capability to work in any state. I can be a poor kid in Alabama and go work somewhere in California and maybe a pay offset, but way more than I'd have made down at the corner store. And I think you're seeing that kind of social experiment play out for the next 5-10 years. But I think the success points you're making are, if you want people in the office, you either have to find people whose lifestyle that is, right? Like my friend Merletta, she would rather be in the office every day. She did not like being at home. But when you do want to hire people that have a certain skill set that can be done remotely, you may have to lean into that, or you're going to risk not being able to hire that talent. And that talent that might be predilected to that, like IT, like remote support, might be harder to chase down. You're not going to get me into an office. That's not happening, right?
Well, show of hands. Yeah. How many people are working out of a home office today?
And an airplane.
And an airplane.
yeah, I don't know if that counts.
So I think that was a good 50%, right?
I think these are great points, and it's interesting that it's kind of, when you think about it, a little bit interrelated, right? Everyone is taking more and more to the cloud. Every organization, every business really is thinking about, how do we create a hybrid environment to try to attract as many people back as we can. So we want to have a different style of workplace. Mm-hmm. We're helping a lot of people in the downtown cores across Canada figure out, how do we balance this so that we have the right equipment in the right places, new workstations and more collaborative areas and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's a big change that's happened that like people are, like you guys are saying, right? It's not going away. We just got to figure out how to support it better. And I think that, businesses that think, hey man, I'm taking everyone back to the office. It's gotta be in the office or nothing. They're going to find over time that some of those people say, yeah, it's going to be nothing. I'm going elsewhere.
It hadn't gone well on some major ones, right? Like it's been really bad. Exactly. Twitter. Who's that coughing up there? Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Wes, is when you said what the most impactful thing of last year. I'm going to say it's the whole work from home, return to office battle, because that, and it spawns into everything from supply chain to hiring to HR to culture to technology. It affects all of it. Yeah. Even out to politics, tax bases, highways, transit, air travel. I mean, it's just every single thing you can think of is impacted by where we work.
Truly.
And how we work. It
also spreads out for me personally. It spreads out my ability to choose people to work with. I'm not stuck with 5 people in the 10-mile area who know how to use 12 different applications. Well, if I want to find that person, I need a much bigger fishing pond, and so it's helped us as a very small business be very targeted to the people that we're looking for. The difference is, what we did? We wrote a handbook on how to work from home. Requirements.
That's a good idea.
You have to have 2 monitors. You have to have a camera. You have to be able to do video conferencing on the fly. You have to, all these things. I don't want somebody sitting from home and thinking I'm working from home on my iPad. or I'm working from home on,
a laptop on a TV tray. Yeah, you're not going to be very effective at that point, right?
But working for my company has definitely been more
done both.
efficient. Is being able to bring people together because we're not in the field. Different for our customer. Right?
Well, I'll throw one other thing in there, and then I'll let someone else speak on it. But this is one idea that really has me, my brain, kind of moving around a lot because it's such a big opportunity there. Marc, you talk about the handbook. What about in the MSP world or managed IT world where there's an actual package, right? So here's your remote equity package. Here's what it comes with. Here's how everyone's doing the same thing, right? And I actually did interview a guest about 4 months ago, and we were talking about that specifically, was this remote work equity. Matt, you mentioned it earlier, right? That the haves and the have-nots when it comes to this stuff, it's not just school kids, it's people working in different places and everything else, right? So how do we make that experience more equitable? And somebody, I think, can make a lot of coin on a subscription package for that remote work equity package.
Yeah. You get into that, and this is one of my top fives, and it goes back to the cloud that somebody brought up earlier, is that you're starting to see normalization of variables. And if we wanted to extract that all the way out without me wasting a whole bunch of words, you're also starting to see the ability to script everything, right? If I had a very, very normalized set of clients that were all Azure Active Directory, all consuming SaaS applications, all using single sign-on, all using the same MFA, all using the same processes, I can script everything, even the human responses to help desk for the most part, right? The normalcy and that normalization makes things significantly more scalable. So I think one of the things we've seen a lot is that script everything, grow everything, automate everything. That'll even extend into automating user experiences, automating this, automating that. Look at ChatGPT just in the last 2 weeks. And
I was just going to say,
like it's nuts. It's nuts. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that another thing is the AI thing that I would put in this year, right? It's almost tipped the scales, but no, it's broadened the scales. I think that what we're looking at right now is nothing compared to where it's going to go. And it's going to be like Terminator. When the technology took over, it didn't take 30 days. It took a millisecond.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen. I mean, the AI that we're talking about is rudimentary. It's like an abacus. It's like a million abacuses processing data at the same time, really, really fast. That's all it is. It's not a flow. It's not analog. It's purely digital.
But it is able to
better. Yeah.
And when you have less variables, so now instead of me, I'll give you a great example in technology. So we used to have server 2003, 3R2, 8, 8R2, 6, 12, 12R2, 16, 19, 20. We had AD Force function level 2003, 2003R2, 2008, 8R2, 12. We had all these different variables, different virtualization platforms, different hardwares, Nope. Now it's literally Graph API. Now it's literally Teams. Now it's literally and so you get into these very, very limited kind of scopes of the data set, which means that the type of machine learning we can apply, like GPT can say, oh, you want to reset a password? I know with 99.9999999% confidence, this is the next step for resetting your password. I know and that can be fed with more data because the cloud now has the telemetry that says, here's the data that says that's still probably West. He's coming from the same machine. He's got his British pillow in the background. Like it's West, right? So those are the kind of things we're starting to see be more possible with cloud and AI/machine learning. I get in trouble. My brother's a really leading AI machine researcher in natural language processing, and he makes fun of me when I say AI because he knows how nascent the field really is. So he's like, so I get like triggered, and I like to say machine learning. But yeah, anyways, yes, tons of that.
Well, it's funny that I actually wrote an article on it for the Imaging Channel that we use AI as a blanket term for a lot of things.
Did you write it or did the AI write it?
Yeah, you may never know.
I can't tell you or I would have to kill you. Yeah,
I can tell.
But yeah, it is this weird thing where we blanket that, right? Where there's a lot of things. And I know Wes McArtor, like you're monitoring over 400,000 devices, right? So you've got a deep pool.
4 million.
4 million. That's a little different.
It's just a comma.
It's like the government. What's an extra zero?
It's a little different. Over 4 million, physical assets, right? And, some of the work that you do, people could almost think of as AI, right? When you're going in and breaking out the data. But really, I mean, like what you're doing is a lot of big data analytics, machine learning, different things, right? And I think that's what's confusing for, the world is that there are many ways to use that data that's out there. And certainly AI manipulation is only one of them, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And I'm sure, Mike, I think you've got a speaker. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm speaking out of school here. I think you're going to have somebody from Microsoft at ECS that's going to be speaking on that very topic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. His name is Brian Evergreen. He's one of the leading experts in artificial intelligence and conversational intelligence and all applications. A brilliant guy, and he actually speaks in a way that you can understand, much like Greg. 47 abacuses in a row give you something. So for some of us, you have to dumb it down, right?
I've not been accused of that particular compliment before.
Well, I'll tell you, ECS, thanks for the opportunity to put a plug in, but, it's really truly about knowledge. And what we do is we take as many of the strategic innovation companies, the Intels, the Microsoft, we hone in on a couple of subjects that are applicable to our industry and adjacent markets. And what's the impact? So we start strategically, and then we make sure that the executives who are presenting can drop it down into, oh, and by the way, we have this bonsai product and solution that will fit here if you're interested in being a reseller. So I've learned a lot. When you start talking about AI, you're talking about AIE, AIC, AIP, AIX, and all the iterations that are behind it. So when you start to really put it out there, you can blow your mind up, right? So we try to do rifle shots, for all the people that come, and we bring some very articulate people. So I'm excited about it, not necessarily because of the success of the show, but I think the success of the show is a reflection of the type of people who are coming to the event and why they're coming to the event. So we're going to kick off, 23 in a grand style with some pretty formidable people and companies.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see that topic being covered there, right? Because I don't know if it's the yellow car syndrome, right? When you buy a yellow car, that's all you seem to see on the road, right? So I don't know if it's just because I'm paying more attention to AI that it seems to be popping up everywhere, but I think it really is, right? And this, the chatbot stuff too. I mean, a lot of people think, I was talking with people, they go, well, it's just like a chatbot on a website. I'm like, no, this is a whole other level.
No,
don't let the name fool you. That's not what this is.
Well, I encourage people to go research a whole lot more, companies and people like Microsoft. When you start looking at AI for good, which is essentially for medical, and Greg, you're right. Some of the things that we're going to see next year and the year beyond in the medical field with AI, mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. And it's right there for you. Just go Google it and check it out. It's an exciting time.
And hey, listen, in respect for time, because I do want to move some conversation to some of these other areas too. This is the one that nobody wants to talk about, but I think we need to talk about it. I'll preface it by saying that I just spent $8 on a pound of butter. Now that's $8 Canadian, which is probably about 10 cents US, but nonetheless, it's a lot of money.
It's more highly concentrated butter up there.
Yeah, when I was paying $4.99, right? So it's this whole idea. I think this is obviously a pretty big thing that kind of hit us in 2022. I'm not going to say I did put recession there because I don't know. When do you finally say you're in one, right? Are we there? Certainly inflation's been a big deal. Interest rates have been a big deal, and Mike McCurdy, maybe I'll get you to start on this one, right? Because obviously costs for what you do as a dealer are, going up as well, right? What do you think?
Costs everywhere are going up. It is having an impact, but not so much. We haven't changed how we're doing things. We haven't added artificial fees, gas fees, inflation adjustment fees. We haven't done any of that type of stuff. But what has hit us more than anything is employees needing more to survive the challenging economic times. And that is, as you know, in a business, payroll is one of the biggest costs that you have. Employees are. And so that's probably what's hit us more than anything due to the inflationary pressures is needing to take better care of our employees so that they can withstand that pressure that's come on them.
Which is a double whammy because you already have challenges with employees because of the new work condition challenges and things that we talked about. So
you got to pay people. You got to pay people more. You just do.
Yeah, this is a big one, right? I think that's one of the other problems when we look at the job market. And I was reading another article on this literally just today because Wes McArtor, thanks for putting that brainworm in my brain, right? Just looking at what some of the, why aren't we getting young people back? And a lot of people, a lot of people just say, oh, it's just Gen Z and millennials are lazy. They don't want to go to work. And And I think, I've seen things that they're saying that they haven't seen a pay raise in like 7 or 9 years. And yet when you're paying $9 for, butter and your pay, hasn't sort of equated, it's pretty tough to get motivated. Right. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, that, this whole idea of, pay equity, right? Making sure that we're actually, people are getting what they deserve.
Yeah, I was going to also say one other thing, if I can, which kind of goes back to the remote worker, because this is something I'm seeing a lot more of and a bigger trend. I think part of it is the inflationary pressure, is employees that are choosing or requiring or wanting to work from home. How do you manage their side hustles? That's becoming a big deal. People are saying I can work 2 jobs during the day, and that's really hard.
There's ways to do that, though.
It's also reality, right?
Yeah, but does it matter?
It's one of those things like Tigerpaw. Like I obviously work for Tigerpaw, and my side hustle is training people on flat rate models for managed print, right? And it's open, full disclosure. And we got an agreement on how much time that is and everything else.
As long as I think transparency is key.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Are you talking about people that are in the field, or people who are in an office, or people who are working from home?
People that work from home. There's a lot of the younger generation, and there's a lot of stuff going on in. If you watch online and stuff, there's a little bit of controversy, and I think it's because of a lack of transparency. If there's transparency,
you don't have to have that, though. It's your equipment, right? They're working on your computers at home, and you should require them to run diaries. For remote people, it should just be part of your. Hey, you want to work from home? Here's how you do it. You have to run diaries, and diaries just basically make sure they're on task. Are they spending the whole day?
I see Greg Walters shaking his head.
All it does is put more pressure on them looking for a side hustle.
Yeah, I'm one with Greg. I'm one with Greg.
You got kids doing $30,000 a month.
People who don't
YouTube.
Listen, people who don't have a problem, you never have to look at it, and they never have to worry about it.
Well,
and you don't hire those people and don't have work from home people you can't trust. So if people know it's there, then they're going to, shit, I'm not taking that job. I mean, that's if you're going to, listen, hey, Colombian wife, inspect what you expect and don't let yourself be freaking out. And it's by the way, you don't have to look at a lot of data. I do this. I've been having remote workers for 20 years. I've been using since guru.com. I've had Indian programmers. I have Filipino work. I have everywhere. I never worry because once they know that switch is on behind the scenes and you have to live or die by the sword, I fire you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what work does. When they get to work, they know that you want this. These Filipinos that are a lot of them that are working from home, they are so happy that they get to work from home, and they're so appreciative. These people that no matter who it is, that they get to get that job. Yeah. If they want to keep it, here it is. This is how we do it.
Well, it's one way of doing it. And I'll certainly say that I'm probably in the Matt Lee camp and the Greg camp, which is focusing on outcomes, right? So it's not to say that there's not accountability, because if you have accountability for things that you're committed to delivering, that speaks for itself, right? So how you get there, the roads to get there, as long as everyone's in agreement and they're transparent about what those outcomes are, then I think you've got to.
And I think that still meets the inspect what you expect mantra, right? It's a different
but it also depends on what you're hiring. So let's say that you have a salesperson and you expect that person. I don't care. To me, making your number isn't I made my number. Making your number is I want a guy who's swinging for the fences all the time. Oh, hey, I made my numbers. I'm going to work 26 hours.
Yeah.
No, I'm not interested in that guy. He's not motivated. He's not entrepreneurial. Now, that's different for different types of positions where, hey, I got my work done. Okay, fine. But not in other positions where you definitely want to know, hey, so hitting your numbers just good enough? Maybe that's not the leader I want.
What about you, Rob? How do you handle that up in Canada?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this, Wes. We haven't had to deal with that. We've got some people that work from home, but we haven't put any tracking on that. It's just kind of outcome based at this point. I don't know. I get it though. If someone is programming for you, or I think it depends on the role, right? For sure.
Eric Crump,
the role and transparency are key.
Yeah, and I see Wes, you had your hand up, so I'll let you dive in on this one.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been doing work from home since '93, before the technology even existed to track computer activity, right? Now they sell mouse jigglers on Amazon, so it jiggles your mouse to make it look like you're actually doing something, right? But the reality is, much like Marc said, a lot of it is based on outcomes and expectations going in up front. But the juxtaposition to a lot of what we've heard on the top 100 and what we've heard today is that article I sent you, where, not that I trust anything the government says, but the Department of Labor Statistics says that productivity is at the lowest point it's been since 1947.
Yep.
So if employee productivity has dropped that much, now granted, there's a lot of factors into that. It's not just
That's more than a dart, but yeah,
that's kind of a juxtaposition to everybody going, oh, the work from home thing's working great. Everybody's more productive than they've ever been.
No, you need things in place to put controls on that.
So are corporate profits down as much as productivity is?
I think we have. You know what?
Could they be up if
there's
the
a story I'm going to share.
are?
Here's a science story. Actually, in the early days, they thought malaria was caused by swamp gas, right? And because if you live close to if you live close to a swamp, you would get malaria, and the gases were there, so they kind of assumed it. And it was one bold scientist said, "Hold on a minute, I'm going to put up a tent, like a tent. I'm going to go live in it and see if I get malaria." And he didn't. And they, soon discovered that it was actually mosquitoes and not swamp gas, right? So this is such a big issue, and I've made a note of it because it's one that we haven't really discussed very much either in our T100 or as a rule, right? This one's got some meat on it, I think, for 2023.
And fun fact, I think swamp gas is where the term miasma comes from, if anybody's bored. That's okay.
I love it. That's a word for the day. We used, what was it, glut. I was laughing the other day in a call because there's certain words you don't get to use very often, and I'd say miasma is up there.
I'd probably say so too. I will say, I want to add go ahead. You haven't spoken more.
Eric Crump.
Go ahead.
No, I was remembering, IDC does these future scapes. And so one of the things they did is future of work. And one of the things they talk about is specifically this micro tracking. And I went to grab it real quick, just what they are saying. They say that by 2024, organizations deploying employee micro monitoring measures, camera, keystroke, we'll see a 20% decrease in actual employee productivity.
100%. I think here's where I'd say, and one of the great things about being the 3 to 5 year guy is nobody knows I'm an idiot for like 2.5, 3 years, right? So take it with a grain of salt. But I genuinely believe we're wrestling with a pressure that's been building for a very long time at a socioeconomic or just overall human choice level, right? What does it mean to be an entrepreneur? Has shifted massively. I can go make YouTube videos and make hundreds of thousands of dollars. While we poked at it, that is a reality that comes from this nascent change in our overall kind of societal structure as time goes on. Call it millennials, call it whatever you will. It's what technology's effect has had after 80 years, right? It's these kind of things that are playing in. And this is probably that next big piece of, if you continue to put pressures of draconian nature, privacy inspection, and you have a workforce that can move somewhere else, it's not whether or not you were accurate and could have gotten more. They're just going to tell you to go F off. They don't have to stay. And I think that's the challenge you're starting to see, is that you have job shortages, less productivity, huge shakeup in the industry. And whether or not applying spy stuff is there or not, I would agree with this stat. And I would probably even make it not attributable to how much loss and employee destruction that happens across the board. And I'll give you a great example. There was a privacy institute 2 weeks ago that just wrapped up, and there was a big article about this because somebody put desk monitors, heat-based desk monitors underneath the desk in this big college school. And it was the professor that was heading it up. And they revolted. They attacked the devices. They ended up putting pressure. They ended up fighting back, all because just of the infringement of my leg being warm or not under this desk. And I'm taking it to hyperbole, but it's where we're heading. I genuinely believe we see
I will say that
revolt.
Go ahead. It's when, first of all, you have to hire the right people to do it. I do not get any reports off of. I got a very simple program. I pay $6 a month for it. It is not reporting. I don't do keystroke monitoring.
Sure.
All I want to know is that is somebody clocking in for 8 hours or working for 8 hours?
Fair.
Here's what it shows me. Active, inactive, active, inactive, active. it's only for one thing. If I think I've got someone to call, we don't send each employee a report on their activity. Hey, your activity's up there. They never see it. There's one time it gets used, and that's when I, as a business owner, think I have an issue with someone. Look, when we make calls, we are always on video calls.
Yes.
If you keep answering me, and I don't get video from you.
Yeah, I'm not trying to cut the conversation off, but in respect,
Go ahead.
We're 10 minutes to the end, and I want to make sure that we cover all of our lovely 5 points. And suffice to say, I think that is going to be a great hot potato for us to tackle in top 100 sessions. And I'd say for the world to tackle in the next year, right? Because I don't think there's going to be an easy, fast answer. So my last one.
Mouse jigglers.
We'll finish off on this. No, that's not the one I wanted. Here it is. Diversification. So, the world changes all the time, right? And I can remember when we were becoming hyper specialized for quite a long time, where it's like, what do you do? And the answer was very simple, right? It's like, I'm a cybersecurity specialist, or I'm an MSP, or I'm an MSSP, or an ops equipment dealer, or what's the terminology that's being used now? A TSP, a technology solution provider, or what's the one that you're using at? It was the TSP, Mike. Is that the one that you guys are using at ECS? I can't remember now.
The workplace services provider.
Thank you very much. Workplace services provider, right? So that this whole idea that whatever these definitions of us are, I think that's a big one for 2023 is diversification, doing more, right? And I've seen so many examples of it and so many things that are converging and coming together. So maybe we'll, start there. I'm not sure. What do you think? Is it the age of diversification or the age of hyper specialization? Yeah, Matt.
I'll say my piece on this. I think there's a forced technology. I wouldn't call it diversification, but I would say that you can't just touch the technology and not be responsible for the data's risk and the security and the things that you bring to the table. And I think we're seeing that in most of the Five Eyes countries, right? US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, where we're driving legislations. In the US, you have CIRCIA, which is the Critical Infrastructure Reporting Act. And it's the first time the word MSP has ever been written in legislation that said, hey, these people touching technology have a responsible to report on these incidents. Well, if I'm going to be a TSP and I'm going to say I'm only touching copiers, or I'm only going to do this, or I'm only going to support help desk, if you're the vector for that demise, or you didn't provide the protections that should have existed as the person and purveyor of those things, you're starting to find the convergence is being forced upon providers over the next few years, right? You're starting to see lawsuits from criminal justice system, DOJ in the United States. You're starting to see things play out that are legislative, regulatory, criminal, civil, all across the board. And I'd put this corollary back to the same thing that we saw in the Industrial Revolution, right? And I'll shut up after that. But in the Industrial Revolution, you built houses, you made steam boilers, they blew up, right? There was no regulation. It was burgeoning technology, and technology drives business first. But then afterwards, there's always a cleanup. No, you cannot build a molasses tank in Boston and have it fall apart and kill 500 people. We're cool. We're kind of not cool with that. Right. And you see the industry change and harden, and you see these kind of things play out. We're in that phase. I would argue that the convergence you're seeing is a diversification, sure, from that raw business level, but it is kind of a forced merger and convergence that's existing in technology in general and delivering technology to especially SMBs, but MSPs and larger points, are starting to become heavily under scrutiny in those.
Yeah.
places.
For the record, I like the word convergence a lot better, right? Because I don't think it's just about offering more things. I think it's because you have to, because they're coming together, right? Yep. And that's one of those things. I remember that very clearly the first time I heard you speak on that, when you were talking about MSPs, MSSPs, and other the 6 different acronyms for what they do. And it's like, hold on a minute. If you're going to touch the data, you're responsible for the security. In our space, that's also been said. I know that Jeff Bendix is a good friend of mine, and one of the first that I know many years ago started on the cybersecurity side. Says it leads with it now. It's mandatory. So someone will call him saying, I want to talk to you about managed print. He says, well, first we got to talk security. It's like, they say, well, no, I don't want that. And they go, no, they go hand in hand. So, once we had that conversation, right? Does it work out that way for every deal? Probably not. But nonetheless, it's this idea that they are, part and parcel, right? Oh, and I did want to bring a shout out, Mr. Michael Cousins. We saw that earlier. And
what's up, Michael?
Oh, I love this guy. I wish he was on it. And Mike wasn't on the top 100 call last week when I called for the volunteers, and I have a limit of 10 people on this platform because this guy, I love everything he's got to say. If everyone's ever spoken with Mike, so appreciate you throwing that in here. And ZZ Top all the way back, bro. So
it's coming back, man. I promise.
So great points on MSP and legislators, Matt. Absolutely, completely agree. So anyone else? What do you think? Hyper specialization? That's probably a silly question now, right? So is it diversification, convergence? What are you seeing? What about what you're doing at your dealerships? What about what you're doing for your businesses? Who wants to take that?
So I'd comment on that. Man, like I think, hyper specialization, is that just being broader at what you can deliver in some ways, right? So if we're managed print services experts, there's a lot of companies in our space that are just dropping off a copier and connecting it to the network and go and see you later, right? And as you mentioned, Wes, like there's security, there's what's the best way to set up your print infrastructure so that you can scale this thing into a hybrid model. There's what about scanning workflow, et cetera, et cetera. So you're kind of almost diversifying around your service with all of the different add-ons that you can deliver there without necessarily going out of your lane as a managed print services company, right?
Yeah, and I think that lane is changing pretty dramatically as well. It's like the QEW. It's been under construction for 10 years, and it's 4 lanes wider. Oh, actually, no, it's not. They took a lane away. But anyways, I digress. Our highway infrastructure. And Mike, this is a big one for you, obviously at ECS as well, that you'll be speaking on this, as well. I think pretty much so. I know that a mutual organization that we both love, Technology Assurance Group, that they've been working with a lot of dealers, both through the BTA and others. Mike, I'm not sure. I think you work with them directly as well, right? On this whole concept of pulling these services together for the future, right? So maybe that's the quick one. As we got 4 minutes, does everyone kind of agree that we got to spend a lot more effort in 2023 on becoming more?
Yeah, absolutely. And the debate about convergence or diversification, those are just catchphrases, right? So you can look at it from 2 perspectives. One is the technology. The other one is, what do I do with it? How do I make money, and how do I pay people? And it doesn't matter if you call it convergence or whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, the mission is, if you go back to the conversation about hiring and training and all those things, well, it kind of goes back to, well, what is it I'm actually doing? Before you go out and hire people and try to deal with micromanaging them behind a screen, who am I hiring? Why am I hiring them? What am I expecting to do in 23? Seems to me in 23, the single greatest objective any dealer or business should have in the imaging channel is how to create revenue, how to create wealth, and how to create profit, and doing it without copy print.
Yes. Well, and I think Mike, that gives you the last word, because we're actually up on the end of the program, right? So anything but copy and print. That's one of the reasons I had Matt Lee on here today, brother. Appreciate it. I actually did reach out to an MSP friend of mine who had another obligation, right? But Mike, I would classify you as a solutions provider. Rob, the same thing, right? That it's not just print that anyone's doing anymore. And I'll tie it back to this recession inflation point, right? Is that our customers are trying to find ways to cut costs and to do things for less as well. So what's the old expression we loved? One throat to choke. The more that we can do for our customers, the less cost management there is for them to get their problem solved, right? And shameless plug here, I'm going to throw it up here now. We've had the link up a few times now, but Thriving in a Recession, 7 Proven Strategies to Implement Now to push your business to the next level. Some really good food for thought as we're all winding down our year and actually looking at next year. And I'm not saying there's going to be a recession, but who knows? But better prepared is always better, right? So Mike Stramaglio was all over it. Thanks, Michael. Anything other than just copy and print, wealth and knowledge. Amen and agree. So we do have the link for the guide in the comments. I'll throw it up one more time for everybody here. It's a bit of a mouthful, so you can take a screenshot or something else if you want to find it there, or just click on it in the comments. And I cannot thank everyone enough. I always tell people, for those that aren't privy to it, the time I get to spend with all of you is my favorite time of all, because I learn so much working together as peers from so many different groups, whether it's in the security space or managed IT, whether it's folks that are providing management services and other things. Just really blessed to be able to have you contribute, and cannot thank you enough for joining us for this effort for the end of the year. And for everyone out there that joined in today, Ray, thank you very much for joining in as well. And for everyone that's joined in today, thank you so much. Remember, until next time, just keep learning.
Thank you.
Cheers, everybody.
Well, guys,
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Wes.
You bet.
Good job, Wes.